Good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Justin, and John. How are you all today? Hello, hello. Is it National Brownie Day? Do I have to, make brownies? Wow. My back is still a little twingy. We'll see how it goes. It's getting better, though, I think. I'm just, I gave it some exercises this morning, so it's a little sore heading in. Otherwise, I'm okay. I am okay. It is halfway through the week. And we have a Gnoll. We have a Gnoll. Are you working from home, Nomad Zeke? That's the good thing about it, right? If you're working from home, you can make yourself brownies just to make the day better. I think this is one of the best things about working from home is if you need a treat, you can just make yourself one. You aren't trapped at the office. Chocolate rum icing sounds good. I usually do autumn spice cookies with rum icing. That's usually my fave. Hello, everyone. Hey, Freestyle. Hi, Julia. All right, Knolling. We're Knolling. We be Nolan. Should I use one of my... Maybe. I haven't quite decided on... I think we were going to go with a more orangey, right? Because we were it was red, orange, blue, purple, and... it was violet, blue... Yeah, green, yellow, or yellow, green. Yellow, green, blue, violet, and red, orange. Right. Okay. So let's see here. And we're pretty muted, all things considered. So I need to look in my oranges and decide what I'm going to use. I think I might actually... Oh, we used this combo on Wyvern. Maybe? I'm thinking about orange-brown. Not enough people think about using, when you're highlighting your reds and mixing oranges in, you can use a muted orange if you want to, if you aren't using a lot of other bright colors. So I'm thinking maybe Asmodeus red. It's similar to what we used on Wyvern, and orange-brown. We used 9070 instead of Asmodeus. We used mahogany. But I was thinking about shading with Necromancer purple since I just grabbed it. Oh, you're in the office? Oh, I see. That's funny. Funny, Nomad Zeke. Hey, Julie. So, okay, yeah, let's do the sash today. And then once we have the sash, then we're going to be able to adjust the pants accordingly. I do need to make this a little brighter and lighter, though. So I wonder if I'm going to start out with kind of mixing this Asmodeus with this orange-brown and seeing how it goes. This might be the way we do. Might be the way we're going to roll. Might be the way we're going to Gnoll. But I can't go too light. And we did go lighter with the leather. So we have some contrast already built in. Plus any red tones in here are really going to set off the green tones in his fur. So. I finally sat down and made a list of paints that I need to order from Reaper. Paints that are maybe underrated. And that I wanted to give a sales boost to. Although I'm also ordering some practical paints. But I'm definitely ordering some Pathfinder. So we got about 4 drops of our Asmodeus red here. I'm going to actually drop 1 drop of orange brown in. Just see what kind of color we get. Like I said, orange brown is one of those kind of underrated paints. I probably should put ordering another bottle on my list. Oh, and my pokey tool is yeah, you should, because this bottle doesn't want to give you any paint. There. So yeah, don't always reach for your bright orange if you need to make a orangey red for a highlight. Consider, especially in the case of Mr. Gnoll, whose cloth is going to be pretty darn, beat up probably by the elements. Looks pretty ragged. Consider going with something like orange-brown. Orange-brown's pretty unique, actually, in our line. Pumpkin orange is probably the closest as far as, other colors, but that's not a standard color in the line. So, if you don't have 9201, think about ordering it. Like I said, Ed's not canceling anything yet, but that's a yet. So I'm going to drop 1 drop of water in there and mix it up and see what kind of color I get. Oh yeah. So that's a more orangey red. It's still like a red, but I think I like it. It is this color. Hold on, let me get my big black base. Triple B. That's the color it makes to mix 4 drops of Asmodeus with 1 drop of orange brown. That's a really beautiful kind of brick color, actually. I really like it. You get some beautiful colors when you do like non-intuitive blends. Like instead of just mixing a red with a bright orange, mixing a kind of muted red with a kind of muted orange, you can get some gorgeous colors. Things that are odd enough that they would never have been produced as a main color in Master Series paint because it would have been like, well, what's that for? But you can make it yourself and get beautiful colors. So I'm going to test this, but my gut says this actually could be pretty good. I actually should get a different brush out though. Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good color, especially if I fade it out and beat it up a bit. Yeah, I don't want to use the Raphael. Where's my Da Vinci? There it is. I'll just come back and line more with this in a second. I'm just going to cover this whole thing. So the good thing about this color is that it is light enough to show up very well against the pants, and because it's a complementary color to the fur, or it's getting there, you know, it's got some red in it and the fur's got some green in it, it's standing out really well from the fur, and it's definitely different enough from our leather to also stand out. So it's what you're always reaching for in miniatures, is making the different parts of the model stand out. And your color choice is the first way you can do this, and then by highlighting and shading and lining, you can get there and make it even better. But with 28mm, making your details stand out is really the name of the game, and everything after that is icing. All of the clever things you do with the blending and the shading and the texture and the highlights and all that's just gravy. So that's actually, yeah, that I can see it. I can see that it's different next to the hide, and I can see that it's different next to the pants. So perfect. And it's not clashing actually at all. It actually works pretty well. So I am pleased with this choice. I think it's better than it would have been just with the Asmodeus, because the Asmodeus was pretty dark by itself. But mixing that orange-brown with it brought it up just 1 level, and that's all I needed. It is a similar shade to the fur. You can see that if you squint, the two just kind of roll together. Like if you squint your eyes, this is what you should always do to test. If you're not sure if something is lighter or darker than the surrounds. If you squint and the two colors kind of blend into each other, then you know they're pretty much the same shade. And by shade, I mean light-dark rating on a grayscale. And if you are going to use 2 colors that are close together on the grayscale, make them complementary or something similar. You should reach for your complementary, especially with the red and green. So for this, the red works still because it is such a different color from the green. So I've introduced contrast both with warm cool and with the complementary element. You got to have contrast somewhere, and if you're not doing it light dark, then it's got to be somewhere else. I love this red. I need to use this red on something else now. I need to make a note of it and swatch it on my little card. 1 second. Beautiful color needs to become on the card. Really like that. It's nothing I've ever mixed before, and I really appreciate that. Like, it's rare when I, like, come across a color, and I'm like, oh, I've never done that before, which is a pretty rare thing for an Anne. Hey, Shadow Raven, thanks for the resub. 17 months. Fantastic. Yeah, 7 more to go for the singing. But yeah, isn't that a beautiful red? Like, look at that. I really like it. So I need to paint something that red. I've decided, actually, maybe this is a good color for my my bus hair. I'll have to think about that. It's a little more muted than I wanted to go. But maybe I can come up with something for this. Maybe it's a good color for my comic book style orc that I want to do. There. Alrighty, and then we've got one more little fabric bit that we missed. But I'm going to double check, and yeah, that's a great color for this model. Like, it's harmonious. And that's because it's a custom mix, Neural. Asmodeus, 4 drops of Asmodeus and 1 drop of orange brown. And I was just like plugging orange brown as, you know, one of the great underappreciated oranges. We also used it on our Wyvern, if you recall. It makes a beautiful, beautiful color to highlight reds with. If you're looking for not candy apple bright, which most of the time we're not. So if you haven't picked it up, please save it from possible future cancellation by ordering one today. And I will add it to my list as well. Because I really do like it and I reach for it. The other thing it's very, very good at, by the way, is highlighting dark brown leather. So if you mix this into something like russet brown or blackened brown, 9199 or 9137, colors that usually people reach for when they are working with dark browns, or even charred brown from Bones. It will make a lovely series of highlights for your dark leather. So all of these things make orange brown extremely useful. Yeah, that's good, Kiriniko. I hate that. They almost kept me after one of my surgeries overnight, and I was like, aggro. Yeah, it is. Although, you know, I'd rather teach people the squint trick, Pendrake, because although doing that, you like going to monochrome, like makes sense. Like I can see how it's cool, but you aren't going to be doing that at home unless you're doing a picture on your phone, which you totally can do. But I think it would distract from the stream. I don't want to be messing around with stream settings when I'm trying to like illustrate stuff. But that's a good cue, guys. So yeah, I'm sure that Geekette and Wample have both advised you at various times to use your phone monochrome function to take a picture of your model to judge your lights and darks. Like one thing I do not have on this model yet is I do not have a near white color. I don't have a really light color except for the pink on his mouth and his teeth and his eyes, which will be yellow. But once we add the metallics, that silver is going to fill that. I also need it to be pretty, but yeah, I just don't think I want to mess with the stream that way. Especially if Wapple and Geekette are already doing it. I know a lot of our watch base watches one or both of them. But yeah, I mean, it is a great trick to keep yourself kind of honest about and help you develop an eye for your lights and darks, for sure. The other thing I could do is try to go pale with this pouch, but that would backfire greatly because it's really an extraneous part of the model. So I'm actually probably going to go just a neutral dark brown with it. When you are using so many colors already on this model, you do not at this point want to go with any new colors unless they are very small accents. I could get away with yellow because I'm going to be putting a gold or brass toned metal onto this model. And since I'm going to be doing that already, I can get away with introducing, yellow into his eyes. And, I could maybe do like a yellow freehand design on his little cloth here. But I would risk drawing the eye away from the important things here. And that's what I'm going to have to worry about once I start doing the brass and stuff. I'm probably going to heavily weather the brass component and just leave the weapons bright and shiny. Because I think since they're neutral silver steel, they're not going to detract too much. And they're also important because they're a part of his threat level. So I feel like probably the eye will still travel from his face to back and forth to the different weapons, which is fully good. Hey, Neural, thanks for the resub. 25 months, dang. Yeah, I mean, my squinting, that's the squinting thing is a tip they told us in art school. Like, just squint at something, and you can usually see if things kind of blend together, and then you know that they're really close on to grayscale. Because you're blurring out boundaries, and you're also, like, dulling colors, and when you do that, then any difference you're getting with color kind of dims, and if they kind of blend together, you know that's where you are. And that's a canvas painter's trick that I adopted from long ago art school. And long ago art school, we didn't have smartphones. So we could not just take a picture and put it in grayscale. And we did not have streaming or the internet, date myself. So we didn't have the ability to go to monochrome mode on a stream either. So yeah, that was the old school. There's the old school way for you, everybody, if you want to do the old school. But the advantage of the old school way is that you can use it anywhere with anything. Yeah, that's fine, Pendrake. I mean, I, on the other hand, have always been... I have never been that person. Like, I encourage people to watch different streamers for precisely the reason that other streamers are going to cover things in a different way than I do. And so I see very little value. For me, I think it's more valuable for people to watch more people than to have everybody adopt the same sort of terminology, tech, and tricks. Because you're going to get more out of it. If you can go to one streamer and get everything that other streamers are talking about too, you're going to miss out because you're not watching those other streamers and they're going to have other things to talk about that are valuable. So for me, I don't mind like talking about what they do on the other stream because that's, you know, maybe going to make people go watch Wapple, and that's always valuable. Or Giggling Geek Get, also valuable. But I personally don't want to adopt those tricks because then people don't have to go watch those people. And then they'd be missing out because Wapple is a madman and Geekette is awesome. So... You had stone tools, but we had fire. Julie. Finger hearts. I love it. But yeah, so I would much rather encourage all of you to go watch at least one of Wapple's streams. Once you start watching him, you can't stop because it's just addictive. He's just crazy. He makes magic. Especially with the oil paint. And yeah, and Geekette also. The bottom line is that usually, like, if somebody uses a term or a technique that you haven't seen on another stream, ask about it. You know, ask them, hey, you know, I was on Anne's stream and she was calling it this. And, you know, so how is it different? Or is it different? Is it the same thing? You know, stuff like that. Anne does it this way. How do you do it? You know? And I think that, for that reason, that everybody should not be the same. It may be convenient, but I don't mind if you guys traipse off to watch Wapple instead of me every once in a while. Just come back. I'd miss you. Hello, Orax and Miniatures Den. Dang, with the heavy-duty raid. Oh my gosh. Ermagerd, you have hit us on Gnoll Day. Actually, Gnoll's coming along pretty well. We were just figuring out what color we can make a sash without clashing everything. And I think we have. And we've made a lovely red also. Yes, welcome everyone. I am Anne. Some of you have probably seen me before. I work for Reaper Miniatures. I do their morning show here on Reaper Pro Tips. And we are painting a Gnoll. Thank you for the resub, JT. Subscribe for 25 months with the Prime. You guys are always so impressive. Like, my Prime sub, it just never gets used. I forget to use it all the time. Yes, we're knolling. Yes, yes. Oh, and the puns roll in. Yep, there we are. Painting Warhammer, huh? Doing commission work over on Lucas stream. All right, so we've got our red. Now I need to mix up some highlights and shadows. I'm going to use some purple, Necromancer purple to be exact. I'm going to try this for a shadow and see if I like it. First time follower, long time watcher. Oh, good. And I love pierogies. Wow, the pierogi kid. Do you make pierogies or just consume them in vast quantities? Because I used to consume them in vast quantities. Yes, correct, Josh. Yeah, and I'm just I used to actually. I'm the person who made Master Series paint. Like I created it. So I used to work for Reaper at Reaper's headquarters, and then I moved out to the West Coast a couple of years ago to be with my now fiance, and so now I stream for them. But yeah, I used to work full time for Reaper, and yes, we are the people who make the minis and the Master Series paint line. Used to make them before grade 7 every day. Oh, I love pierogies. Oh, good. The Copper Dragon. Yeah, he's a really good dragon. Actually, the sculptor of that dragon, Josh, is on this stream. She's in the chat. If you see green users, that's Julie Guthrie and Bob Rodolfi. They are nice enough to tune into my stream a lot. This figure actually was also sculpted by Julie. And yeah, so they're here. So if you have any questions, Julie may actually, be able to spare a moment to answer them about her dragon sculpting. I think she does the best dragons. So. Oh, Pendrake is talking chemistry. Crazy talk. Yeah, my lineage is German as well. All right, so let's get this purple mixed up and actually stop babbling and start painting. So this is one of the newer purples. It comes in a fast palette. I believe it's in Gloom and Grave. It is Necromancer Purple. My palette does tend to wash things out, so we throw our big black base on there. But that's Necromancer Purple. This red is a mix. It's my new favorite red. It's the red we put on his loincloth. I wanted something that was a little desaturated and a little lighter. So it is a mixture of, as I throw my paint on the floor, because, it's a thing. It is Asmodeus Red, which is a Pathfinder color, and a lot of people don't know much about the Pathfinder line, but Reaper does make it. We license it from Paizo. There are some lovely colors in this line, so check it out. Asmodeus is my favorite red. It's a really warm brick red. And then Orange Brown, which is a very underrated orange. It's a muted orange. Has a bit of brown oxide in it to dull it down, but it still makes vibrant highlights for reds. As I drop everything. Apparently, I've just you've thrown me into Conniption Land, Miniatures Den. So the other thing that Orange Brown, it's much brighter than you think it is. Here, let me show off the Wyvern. So Julie's Wyvern, this guy, we decided to do as more of a kind of a tiger stripe kind of pattern. But this is Orange Brown mixed with a color called Mahogany Brown, 9070, which is a much darker and browner red than this. But you can see that the orange is still very vibrant, even though when you look at Orange Brown, you're like, oh, that's not very bright when you look at it in the bottle. But it actually makes beautiful transition colors. So if you have not picked up this color, think about it. Highly recommended. Also great for highlighting dark leather. Usually if I'm doing leather, yes, Necromancer Purple is in Gloom and Grave. Because they're so popular, Josh. We were just bemoaning that yesterday. That the Rockies are not in stock because we had a person get on who wanted to paint, or was asked to paint a dragon for a 4-year-old. And so Rocky was, of course, the thing that got recommended instantly. But yeah, they're super popular. I mean, that's the problem with making something successful, right? It's always out of stock, especially in this day and age. If you thinned it, okay, so any acrylic paint is not truly transparent. You cannot get it to that level because pigment is particulate, Pierogi Kid. So it's not fully soluble, to use a chemistry term. And since I made the paint line, I get to use those terms. Pigments are always particulate. So they're never some of them, like the very vibrant and low coverage colors, might seem really transparent, but even then they still will build up to opacity if you put enough layers on them. Whereas something like a traditional ink is a dye, and that's fully soluble and it's fully transparent. Now, can you thin down our paint enough to get the fluffy cloud blends? Yeah, I think you can. I kind of created Master Series to be extremely thinnable and not fall out of solution, because I always hated that about a lot of other paint lines, is when I hit it with enough water to get good blends, they would fall out of solution and I'd constantly be stirring my paint before I applied it. Drove me nuts. So when we created Master Series, I looked for a base that I could thin a lot and still have it stay in solution. We also add things like flow improvers straight into our paint, and that also helps with that. I am not sure on the Kickstarter Valthorn. That would be maybe a Quindy. Oh, okay, there we go. Quindy says, because we're behind on exporting the VODs and also still coming, the Kickstarter is. Reaper's always got its hands in 50 pies, trying to balance a lot of stuff with very few people. Reaper's much smaller than you think it is what I learned. I'm going to thin down. You guys can see how beautiful this Necromancer Purple is. Look at that beautiful color. Now, this is very transparent, but yet if you build up enough layers, you will still see that it is opaque. In fact, you can almost see sometimes the particulation, the granulation of the pigment, little tiny particles like coming out. And that's what makes acrylics. The fact that they are not transparent, the fact that they will build up and cover. Never be worried, Valthorn. It's almost always just that we have a lot to do at Reaper and not a lot of people to do it. Everybody at Reaper, and I speak with the knowledge gained from being on site for 17 years working for them, but all of us wear 16 different hats. And the great strength of Reaper is that we have extremely competent people. And the great weakness is that there are limited numbers of them. So we are always working on things, but sometimes it just takes us a while. So I'm going to try this purple as a shadow. I think it's going to work because it's a very red magenta purple. I wanted to use something different, and it's cooler. I really love shading like oranges and red oranges with purples. Just going to add in a little bit of a shadow up there and kind of judge it. Base boss got delayed. Oh, they're adding bases that people wanted. Oh, yeah. Julie and Bob are, like, famous for that. Like, I think Bob is the one who is, like, at one of the artist conferences going, yeah, sometimes I just, take the cushions off the couch and look for stuff with interesting textures. And we're all like, yeah. But, works. It works. So I'm using the purple to darken down this just a wee bit here, trying to get some dimension in here. This part of the cloth really does kind of dip down, and so it's not going to be catching the light as much as this part that's flaring out. And I am a more traditional painter. I'm probably a little less organic than Luca. Luca has some beautiful, he just put a few brush strokes on and poof. I tend to build up my effects over a longer time. First high quality brush. Oh, nice. Sure. I mean, I'm kind of a weird one, Mad Mortigan. My brushes, I'm probably a brush abuser. Like, they probably will come to take me away eventually. The reason I don't actually use brush soap. I will occasionally condition a brush if I think I've abused it or if I think the hairs are kind of drying out. Keep in mind, this is hair. It's natural hair. And so if your brush is maybe if you're noticing hairs breaking off or becoming brittle, then putting some hair conditioner in your brush to sit overnight and then just rinsing it out before you paint is a great tip. And that's the one probably that I still do. A lot of people will use pink brush soap or other stuffs that are kind of a cleanser and a conditioner, and they'll point their brushes. It's also a way to train your brush. If you notice that you do have a couple of errant hairs or the shape isn't quite holding, you can try to train your brush by reshaping it every night and letting it sit. I do not clean my brushes, but I am a compulsive rinser. I rinse my brush and reload it compulsively all the time, zillions of times during any given stream. I do that. Whenever the paint has sat in the brush for any amount of time, I am rinsing my brush, even if I don't need to. And because of that, I seem to be able to get away without cleaning them. However, it is not best practices. So for most people who kind of forget to rinse their brush off most of the time, I would recommend doing a clean. You don't need to clean it every day, and you probably shouldn't, because soaps have solvents in them and stuff to strip the oils off of things, and you want your brush to be nice. So if you do wash it after every painting session, I'd say definitely use conditioner on it after that to let it sit overnight and just kind of keep the moisture in it. If your brush hairs dry out, they become brittle and break, and that will make your brush wear a lot faster. If you ever have your brush split and go the poof syndrome, the Pugh syndrome. Well, this is a synthetic, so, you know, all's fair in love and war. But if you have the Pugh syndrome, you've almost certainly got paint dried up in the ferrule. See that dark near the bottom? And you'll see that on your sables too. If you see a dark line toward the bottom of the brush and your brush is having a hard time keeping a point, then it's time for some more sincere cleansing. I actually did grab my bottle of this. It is horribly distorted because it got heat on it. But I use Winsor & Newton brush cleaner and restorer. It is a fluid that will take paint right out of the ferrule. Be careful with it because it will also take the paint off of your ferrule. But if you dip your brush in a little bit of it, I usually use my palette, my ceramic palette, and I kind of roll my brush back and forth and kind of work it up into there, and then just wipe it off on a paper towel. I do that repeatedly until I can no longer see paint particles coming out of the ferrule. Then definitely condition after that. Definitely do. I have noticed that that although that chemical is non-toxic, and as in if you spill it on yourself, no big deal. But it will dry out the brush a bit. So I do condition after I do that. Just hair conditioner. Yeah. No. I mean, you can use a brush conditioner if you want, but hair conditioner is just as good. Get one of those little travel bottles if you don't normally use conditioner. I just use whatever conditioner I've got. I think mine is like coconut ginger. But I seldom find the need. I find that because I rinse my brushes so often, I so seldom have problems. In fact, my brushes seem to improve with time. What they will do when I do this, because I do this, is I'll slowly lose hairs and they will thin down. Let me see if I can find my old, just to show you kind of what happens to them over time. There we go. So I've got two Raphaels here. Let me grab my newer Raphael, which should still be. So what happens to Anne's brushes over time because I rinse compulsively? On the right, you can see a almost brand new Raphael 8408, which is my preferred shape. I like the long taper. And then you can see one on the right, and it has shrunk down and narrowed down. And also, yeah, it's kind of like just lost hairs over time. And eventually they get so skinny that I'm no longer able to use them. I thought I had one of those around here. Let's see, but I do not see it. It may be in the other room. But yeah, eventually they just get so skinny that they're just not worth using anymore. But yeah, it's pretty much what you want to do. Dish soap in the palm of your hand. You know, dish soap is, if you're going to use dish soap, you're really stripping all the oils off the hair at that point, and your brushes will dry out. Definitely conditioner if you're going to use dish soap. Brush soap and like the pink soap, which comes in the cake, those are pretty mild. Dish soap is heavy duty. Like, it's meant to cut amounts of grease, right? It's meant to cut a lot of grease and gunk off your dishes. So dish soap is definitely and it's not a super harsh solvent. Obviously, there's a lot of, soap. There's a lot of worse ones out there. But yeah, I'd say that's not optimal. You probably get away with it as long as you condition after. But you are drying out the hairs. You are essentially stripping all of the oils and moisture out of your hairs when you do that. So yes, crows, exactly. Yeah, beard conditioner. Yeah, beard conditioner works too. It's just you're putting something on to restore moisture and, keep your hairs healthy is essentially what it is. So, Snow Fairy from Lush to clean your brushes if they get nasty. Makes them smell like sherbet. Awesome. That's even better. Like, now I have to make a note, Korniko, of that. I'm going to mix up a highlight for this so that we can keep working. And I think I'll do some texture, and then we'll do some weathering on the ends, because obviously he's ripped this cloth up a lot. So I'm going to just do a 2-2. Since I did a 4-1 for my base coat, I'm going to do a 2-2 Asmodeus and Orange Brown for highlight. I layer instead of wet blending, and I tend to build it up. I'm kind of a classical miniature painter, I guess, is what that comes down to. I started really working on my craft of painting and getting better at it back in around the year 2000. And I won my Golden Demons in 2002. So I'm old school, but I've tried to switch it up over time. But on this stream, and especially for 28 millimeters, I tend not to be too avant-garde. I do work on, my preference these days is busts. And so I do work on some more interesting, she's got light on one side and shadow on the other. Some more interesting effects on busts I do. But, and we were just using Grisaille to block in this lady the other day. So I do do a lot of classical art techniques, and not as many as Rhonda. And I am like pushing my threshold as a miniature painter. But I tend to go more into that stuff on my own stream, which is twitch.tv/paintingbig, which is my moniker. And that we do that stream on Saturdays. I just do a Saturday stream just for fun. And I typically work on a competition level paint job. Or something higher end. Just gonna fade out. I've got, this might be not quite orange enough. I might need a little bit more. Oh, Snow Fairy only available during the festive season. Bummer. I also have a Patreon where I do a whole bunch of stuff from beginner all the way up to advanced tutorials and color write-ups and all sorts of stuff. The colors are always Master Series Paint because obviously if I created the line, I kind of know how to use it. So I've changed my proportions here. I'll talk about it in a second. But yeah, that's patreon.com/paintingbig. And that's actually, it's my visible means of support. I am a full-time artist since I moved out here. Thanks, COVID. For encouraging me to take the plunge into freelancer. Nobody says that phrase ever, right? Thanks, COVID. Or maybe it'll become like a thanks, Obama. Oh, boy. If you use dish soap, it is too harsh. It's a very harsh cleanser. It's meant to cut vast amounts of grease off of your dishes. It is not ideal. Get brush soap or something else. But if you are going to use a dish soap, you're going to have to condition afterwards. But dish soap is a very harsh cleanser. It's got a lot of, it's going to dry out your brush hairs because it's supposed to take all the oils and grease. It's just going to kind of strip them. So if you do that, you need to replace that. Dish soap, not, I would use just bar soap before I use dish soap. Dish soap, way too strong. But especially if you've got some natural like glycerin soap or actually even Castile soap would be good because that's an oil-based soap. Those kind of soaps I would say would be great. And actually, I should try that because I have Castile soap. I should use it on my brushes and see how I like it. But yeah, I would not use dish soap. Normal bar soap tends to have oils in it, and dish soap definitely does not. So I doubt you've done irreparable harm if you just got the brush, so don't worry too much about it, but definitely switch to something that will make your brush happier. And maybe I'll do some texture on this, but to do that, I need to actually bring up my transitions more. So I like this color. This is working out pretty well. Now I am covering the surface with a little bit too much orange, so I'm losing some of my original beautiful red, and I'll probably come back in with that a little bit. Don't want to, this is what happens to a lot of people. When they start highlighting, they essentially over-highlight. They cover a lot of surface with their highlight, and they get what's called losing your mid-tone, where suddenly you've got shadows and highlights everywhere, but your original color has completely disappeared. And this is a very common malady in mini painting. So I'm going to put my shadows in, but then I'm going to come back in and make sure that I have not lost my mid-tone. There, we got that purple. Let's go on back and make sure we get our shading in. Yeah, I've got Dr. Bronner's Castile. That's what I've got. Recommendations on a new dragon once I'm finished. Yeah, I mean, the copper is really good. Trying to think about other popular, I mean, almost anything. Are you looking to scale up to bigger dragons? Because there's a lot of really nice ones that have come out. What's the one, what's the one that's kind of like swooping with one wing out that's a little bit bigger? Is it Navath? No, Navathar's the dragon, Stone Share dragon, right? Who's the dragon that Michael Proctor painted that's blue? Do you guys know? It's from Kickstarter a few years back. And he's kind of swooping. Narthrax. Yeah, Narthrax. I would say once you're done with the Copper Dragon, go for Narthrax. He's one of my favorites because I love that swooping motion that he's got. His wings are really cool, and his scales are also cool. And I like his head. And then, you know, once you completely decide you want to sacrifice your sanity, then you should pick up Maldrakar, the 5-headed dragon tyrant. Mal will break you if you are available to be broken. Dragons are just... The reason you don't see a lot of top-level painters painting dragons to, like, competition level is they take so long. They take so long to do well. But it's also a challenge, and if you love dragons, you can really have some fun with it. There we go. Yeah, thanks for the... Quindy just linked Narthrax. Taroxol is also good, but also Taroxol is very much larger than Narthrax. If I was starting with the copper with Kefrixis, I would go to Narthrax first because he's a little bit bigger. And then I would go up to something immense like T-Rock because Taroxol is huge. Like, Taroxol would be your practice for doing Maldrakar. To see if you can really handle that many scales. Yeah, I really like Kefrixis. He's just a nice dragon to start with. It's a good size. It's not too much. You can experiment with scale techniques and, you know, different stuff. Just a really good dragon. Yeah, that's what I thought for it, Thor. Ah, Nathavar, right. And that's it. Nathavar is the Dragons Don't Share dragon, right? So then you could scale up. You could go Kefrixis, Narthrax, Nathavar, and then Taroxol, and then Maldrakar. Okay, now I want everybody run out, buy all those dragons, and paint them all. Yeah, Cursed. Well, you know, a lot of us start out learning new things not in optimal order. Let's just get that clear, right? Including yours truly. Like, when do humans ever learn anything in optimal order? Like, how many of us have not gone, I can create a website, I don't need WordPress, and then, you know... tried to reverse engineer our knowledge base, or just got destroyed, you know, because we took on too challenging of a task with no intermediate tasks to teach us how to do that task, and get overwhelmed, and then you just, like, you know, go down in a flaming pile of metal and regrets. Oh, dear. No, thank you. I would rather do a good job than a fast job. I mean, this is my problem, right? Yeah. Yeah, Narthrax, I really like Nar's pose. Like, I really love how he's kind of tilted. He's kind of swooping in. It's a great dragon to challenge. If you're doing it for D&D, it's a great dragon to put on the table coming up against your adventuring party. Because he's just got a cool, dynamic pose. I need a higher highlight, guys. So sometimes when you're highlighting with oranges and yellows, you're going to run into this. Because these colors tend to have a bit of translucency to them, they're not going to create really harsh highlights, which is great when you're trying to layer and you're trying to get smooth transitions. You definitely don't want, you know, something that's going to stand out where you're going to have to fight it for brush strokes. But there will come a point, especially if you want to do any texture, where you want the brush strokes to show up a little bit. And so at that point, what I usually do is add an off-white into my orange mixture. Hold on, I've got to finish this very messy shading over here under the arm. Very, very messy. Messy, messy, messy. Not elegant today. We are not elegant today, people. Let's nod to a 3-headed Cerberus, Rocky. Oh, wow. Your local store has 5 on the shelf, huh? They need to return them to Reaper so they can sell out again. Yeah, Nathavar is a really nice dragon. I painted the one for Dragons, the original Dragons Don't Share box set. Not the original, but the when Julie first sculpted Nathavar. I got to paint her. I hadn't painted a dragon for Reaper in a very long time. Not since the old metal dragons. When you get into the bigger dragons, highly recommend learning to airbrush if you're open to it, Josh. It will allow you, since base coating is the most boring part of the hobby, getting an airbrush and getting at least a little familiar with it so you can do base coating, it really takes a lot of the time out of that initial coat on the dragon so that you can get to the fun parts. Especially just really nice for blending wings and stuff. And then you can go in and detail. But the detailing is always the fun part, and the base coat is the slog when you get up to bigger dragons. So I'm always for anything that will reduce frustration and reduce boredom. Because then you're more likely to finish a model. So with that in mind, yeah, highly recommend if you're going to get into big models like dragons, getting a simple airbrush and learning just basic techniques with it. We have we do have a show on Reaper on the YouTube, House of Vex with Aaron Lovejoy. Aaron is an airbrush pro, and he's mostly talking about the Reaper Vex on that, but a lot of his airbrush tips are applicable to a lot of different brushes. So yeah, Cornico, exactly. Bone 6, perhaps. Alrighty, I'm going to mix up another highlight. So far, I've got my walnut brown just for lining and darkening. I've got my necromancer purple, which I really love. It's just a beautiful color. Our original red that we mixed up, I dumped a bunch of that orange brown into it, but I've only been able to get it up to this level, and that is not enough for proper texture. So I'm going to be adding a little bit of my favorite off-white. Can everybody recite along, right? Bleached linen. I used to use linen white a lot, but bleached linen, when I add white, I tend to want it to act immediately. What linen white is really good for, 9061, is it's a more subtle white. It's not quite as heavy a pigment load. And so if you want something that's an off-white that's going to shift your color just a little, then I would recommend linen white if you're looking for kind of a yellowish off-white. But I tend to like kind of smacking around my paint a bit more. So bleached linen has a higher level of titanium pigment load, which means one drop is going to make a large effect on this. And I would rather have that and then thin it way down to work with it than have a softer effect and have to like scale it up. So I've really washed this out. Now it's almost a German orange, which I actually really like. These colors today are fun, actually. Trashorama, 29 months? What's with you? You're still trailing a couple of people, Trash, but you are like up there. All right, so we're going to work with this German orange. We're going to work with, so essentially our triad for this color is these three. And in keeping with the fact that Ed has totally jettisoned my old food rule, where I wouldn't name a food after paint, or sorry, a paint after food, Ed has decided that he doesn't believe in that, and so that's why you're seeing all these new names with food. He even talked to me about it on the phone. I'm like, Ed, dude, it's just my rule, and it was just like a rule. But yeah, I would call this tomato red triad. That's what I would call this. It definitely looks like, this looks like tomato bisque. So we call this tomato bisque. This is tomato soup. And this would be ripe tomato. So if I had to create a new paint triad based on these colors, this is what I would do. Obviously, I've spent way too much time creating weird names for paint because I find this giggle worthy. All right, so if we're going to do a texture on this, I would like to kind of suggest a ragged texture at the edges. So we're going to kind of stipple dash, and then if I have too much texture, I will come in with a glaze and knock it down. But by using kind of this dashed brush stroke, let me get close, we can kind of suggest a bit of rough texture kind of coming apart. And I'm going to grab my previous highlight here because I went into the purple and I feel like I need a little bit to knock out that texture just a little bit. So just little lines like that. And since we're at 28 mil, that's going to be pretty good for texture. I just did a series. I'm doing a series on my Patreon right now for the $2 tier. So it's super cheap. it's entitled 28 millimeter textures, and it's about the type of textures that are effective at 28 millimeter. Because you can't do everything. I mean, a lot of times with textures, you're going to have a lot more room to do it on a bust, but there are simple things that you can do at 28. And I just did one on doing denim. Just did a video and put it up yesterday. So if you are interested, if you paint a lot of 28, and if you're interested in the types of textures that you can do at 28 millimeter, then if you come over to my Patreon and sign up for $2, you'll be able to get that series. I think I'm still thinking about what I want to do next month for that. Because cloth is one of those key elements. And the first one we did was dents and dings and scratches. So I have to look at other types of texture. I think I'm going to do fur maybe next. Like we did here on Gnoll. Actually, he might be an example. But there's actually even a finer fur texture you can pull off at 28 if you're patient. And so I think doing coarse fur and fine fur like the kind that you would find on like a greyhound or a horse. And coarse fur would be more like Gnolly here. So I'm going to take my highlights and I'm going to kind of layer them on top of each other. And mostly my texture is going to be in areas that are mid-tone or highlight, because it's where light falls that you tend to see the most texture. So you see how we're getting that kind of rough texture down here now? Now, given this is blown up 60 zillion times on your monitor at home, but I can still see it here with my eyes in person. So my rule is with texture, if I can kind of hold it out here and still see the texture. I don't hold it at full arm's length because that's way far away from my eyeballs. But if I can hold it like more than a foot away from me and I can see it, that means on a tabletop, if I like picked it up and looked at it, I'd be able to see it. So tomato soup, ravioli red. A grape tomato medley with those colors. You love the tomato paint colors? I should do those, pros? Is that what you say? Should I make a note that if I get access to the Reaper paint department, I should come in a couple days early at next ReaperCon and beg Ed to let me mad scientist for a while? You know he'd let me. I'd just be like, hey, Ed, can I mad scientist? And you can use any colors I make. Like he'd say no. But it would be worth it. It'd be worth it for tomato soup, tomato bisque, and ripe tomato. And this is horrible, too, because tomatoes are toxic to me. Like, they're the food I cannot eat. So the more we go over with this kind of horizontal, and the reason I chose horizontal on this, too, is that because it's a vertical surface, this is going to kind of de-emphasize, like it's going to be easier to make the eye kind of blend in. When you use a vertical brushstroke on a surface that's long and or vertical itself, it tends to just accentuate that you're not blending. Whereas if you go sideways on a long surface, these things will attempt to, the eye will kind of see them as blended, even if they're not. So it fools the eye a little bit to use a brushstroke that is counter to the direction of the object. And I do this a lot, especially with textures where you're purposefully leaving brushstrokes. So then you still want it not to be like too bad. Oh, you like the tomato. All right. Tomato triad. It would be me forcibly moving away from not naming paints after food. I always just did it. It was kind of my informal rule, and I did violate it over the years. Plenty of times. See grape purple or dusky grape. And cinnamon red. All that. There are various ones, but yeah, this would be like totally going against my initial. I did it originally because kids. Because sometimes you just don't want to name things after food that kids might just be dumb enough to eat. I hate to say that, but I mean, I remember being a kid and my friends were pretty dumb and I was probably pretty dumb too. If something was named grape, you might try it. And our paint is non-toxic and it's not going to kill you, but I don't want to encourage people to eat it. So this is looking good now. That purple is really kind of making a bruised, dirty shadow. The highlights are coming up very well. I like the texture effect a lot. The other thing that this tomato bisque, highlight is good for is if I wanted to fade out the edges here. But I kind of like the dirty look I've got going on. You don't always, you want to fade out cloth if it's kind of like road dust kind of stuff. Do I have, where did I just do? If something has been worn and worn and worn and worn, it can definitely lose color. Like Wolfie's, this is the jeans pattern that I did for the denim video. So toward the bottom of the jeans here, I've definitely faded it out and there also, so that I can also introduce some brown tones from ground in dirt. The sword works really well as a pointer. So we could do that with Gnolly's kind of sash here. But I'm kind of inclined, I kind of like that kind of dark, dirty look that I've got going on. So I don't know if I really want to. Tide Pods look delicious. Oh my god. No, no, no. No. No, bad. Bad, bad. Okay, so if we were going to fade out part of this, we would use the color that I use, usually. We'd either use Shield Brown or Driftwood. The thing is, though, he's a pirate, and I feel like he'd be getting stuff drenched in seawater. And, you know, he might have mold growing in it, but I don't think that he'd have, like, a lot of dust accruing to him. That's why I think I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't make that edge bleach out too much yet. Plus, I kind of like it the way it is. So, yeah, people are dumb. Exactly. So another thing that you could use to shade this with, because it's red-orange, you could take the complementary, the complement of... orange is blue and the complement of red is green. You could use a greenish red to shade this and get some more realistic, cool shadows. So if I was going to do that, probably one of the colors I might choose is Tianzia Jade, because I'm more red than orange. So, oh, is this what I've got? Nope, this is Brilliant Green. I lied. Too green. How did you get over there, Brilliant Green? You should not be there. Wrong place. What happened to my Tianzia Jade? Oh noes. Maybe we use Deep Ocean instead. Maybe Deep Ocean. So more blue with some green. Let's try that. Hard candy dice. We always wanted to make chocolate models, but then we'd have to they'd have to approve our facility for making food, and that was just too much of a headache. Now that Ed, however, is going to have a pizza kitchen, somebody should ask him, hey, Ed, if you're finally approved to have food made on site, will we get chocolate miniatures? You totally need to ask him that. Totally need to make some silicone molds, food-safe silicone molds, and learn how to pour chocolate into them to make, and have some of our miniatures done. A chocolate Rocky would be so cute. Oh, and I totally lost my glasses, which means I'm blind. Not really. I'm perfect. I see perfectly well out here. I just don't see well down here. Man, somebody wanted me to put smells and tastes, flavors into paint, and I was like, no, that Deska. Yeah, right, you'd have to have edible paint for the chocolate. Though you can get that. Like, they airbrush those truffles all the time. We have a place close to us that does fancy truffles with airbrushing. So, okay, so complementary color here. Deep Ocean, which is a beautiful color. Also, you should never underestimate, and if you do not own it, consider it 9076. It, being a green-blue, is a natural shadow for a red-orange. So I'm going to thin it down a little bit more, actually, because I want this to be subtle. I'm going to layer it some areas, see if I like it. I bet players would embrace chocolate monsters pretty extremely. So when you move this green-blue onto here, you're going to see a little bit of it. And it's going to create, it's not going to actually be very, very blue. It's going to kind of see it. You can see the color shift, but it really cools everything down. It makes a very natural shadow. There are lots of cunning tricks you can use with this sort of technique, using complementary colors to shade on skin tones. But it depends on the skin tone, because some skin tones are work much better with blues and greens, I think. They can be used as darkeners and muters, muting out colors on skin tones, almost any skin tone. But actually suggesting the blue or the green, usually. I was reading my new one of my new portraiture books because I'm trying to up my game on busts. So I'm studying portraiture. And they were talking about how lighter skin tones are more translucent and are more likely to show like blue, you know, from veins and stuff, which is common sense, but then you never think of that in relation to painting a bust, right? Maybe other people do, but I don't. So now I do. Yeah, that's true. Chocolate monsters would totally empower murder hobos. I guess that's a good reason not to do it. Because I do not want to empower murder hobos. Now, what this is doing, though, is, see, now we've got an even more kind of bruised out, like, soiled-looking loin thing for him. Or a sash, rather. I think I want to put some over here, too. So when I put it on, I can see the blue-green. I am going to do a little bit of blending here. But as it dries, it will more become just kind of a shadow. I need to reintroduce a little bit of my red. Lost a little bit of my midtone here, so I may as well feather it right into this. So it's more just a shadow. So you can really see the blue-green when you introduce it first, and then when it dries, you see it kind of fade out. So this is fun. I'm having fun with this. We are a little over an hour, and I do not want my back to be totally annoyed with me, so I think I'm going to start. I'm going to at least do the rest of these highlights really quick, though. For those of you who came over from Luca's stream, I put my back out over the weekend, and it's still a little dicey, so I haven't been doing my full hour and a half. Trying to kind of ease back into it. Just do a little bit of my tomato bisque highlight along the edges here. Now this is a horizontal surface, so my highlights are going to be vertical. But yeah, I don't want to irritate the back too much. I would like it to fully recover so that I could still do long streams in the future. Well, you wouldn't warehouse it ever, Debra. You would just do it to order in the Pizza Dungeon. Do like a few for each day. Keep them in little racks in the case. You know, like a chocolate shop. All right, so back here, his spine ruff definitely has there's an arch or a lump here where his spine fur comes down under here. So I am actually going to use a horizontal stroke here, and I'm going to accentuate that this sticks up a bit. I'm using kind of a mix of my tomato bisque and my tomato soup. Those who totally missed me naming these colors earlier are going, what? Is Anne painting with food? Ed is gonna like kill me for bringing up that chocolate miniatures thing again. Either that or he was already planning it and it will just become part of the master plan. So I just want to bring that nick in there to emphasize. And of course we are zoomed so far in, so let me zoom back out so that you guys can see him more like naturally. So this is really looking good now. These colors look really good together. I am very, very happy. Ice dice. Oh, is it like ice cube dice and you could totally use it for chocolate? Is that what it is, Bane? That would be awesome. I may have to check that out if that's so. Yeah, yeah. But something like Rocky. Rocky would be fine. As long as you like resculpted the wings to be up against the body. Oh, yeah. Food grade materials. Awesome. Okay, ice dice. Let me make a note. Thank you. I love it when I find out about stuff like this. Ice dice. I hope they do sell off. I mean, if you're going to do a Kickstarter, you may as well, like, you know, make money off of the product that you just Kickstarted afterwards. I will look it up. Thanks for the reference. You're waiting for yours. Oh, local chocolate shop does dice already. Wow, those people are ahead of the curve. So just to like do a little tiny recap before I decide to end it here, guys, how we came up with this color scheme. Gnoll's in first edition D&D were very yellowish, greenish brown, and so we essentially tried out a couple of different color schemes on his paws and landed on this very greenish brown color. It's really a yellow green that's muted, so we went to our color wheel and we used the back of it. Here we are. Let me back out. There we are. Perfect. All right. Welcome to my work surface. So yellow-green is up here. And what you do is you look for, if you're looking for a triadic color scheme, that essentially uses the triangle here. Let me move my light so we can see. There we go. So you're looking at this triangle and you want to line up one point of your triangle with the color you're starting with. So since Gnoll is a muted yellow-green, we start with yellow-green. We go across and we find at the other point of the triangle, we find blue-violet. And at the other point of the triangle, we find red-orange. And that is entirely how we have come up with this color scheme. So this is a very simple, instead of going with red, yellow, blue, or green, orange, purple, this is going with the intermediary colors. Let me move this back to where it should be. There we are. Perfect. And so that's how we got to this color scheme. And then when I was looking for something that was, I wanted a lighter color for the belt, I pretty much went with the neutralish tan. Which is just brown enough and just muted enough not to clash with anything. Oh, LA Port. Oh, it's just a train wreck. Very cool. Yep. And M&M's, I always use that. I didn't like Skittles. But yeah, so just as a reminder, that's how we came up with this color scheme. So that's why it's working so well together, because our main parts are all the points of that triadic triadic color scheme. And because we did it that way, we knew that these colors work together. So it was just a matter of like getting the colors to the point, like mixing a little bit of orange into my red. So I ended up with a red-orange instead of just a red. And because Gnoll here is so muted, he's so brown, that's why I went with a brownish orange to mix into my red. And my red was already a little bit brownish and darker. So that's why this color scheme is working so well together. Like, I really love it now. I really love this color scheme and how it's turning out. Dragon Head Ice Tray is nice. Oh, it's all right. This stream is full of distraction. Anybody who wants actual focused knowledge should go to my Patreon. I like answering questions, and the byplay is fun. Yeah, that's nice. Alrighty. Oh, I'm glad you like him, Julie. I think these colors are really cool. And Ron will be happy that I don't know, though. Part of me wants to keep him, but I probably will send him to Ron so he can go in the Reaper Gallery. He's definitely a really cool Gnoll, though, and I really love how these colors turned out, and I think I'm going to use this color scheme for some other figure. I'll have to find a bust. That this will work on. There we go. Just a little bit of texture on this back edge here, just because the arm casts a shadow for sure, but there's a little bit there you can see, so I want that to definitely come out. Alrighty. And then just a little bit more, I think, on the bottom edge of this back thing, and then we will call it. So, Quindy, if you want to queue up or figure out who we're rating for the day, I'm going to put in some very tiny, and this is where, so if you guys are wondering how I get such tiny little dots and dashes, the answer is a really good brush, plus quite thin paint, plus unloading my brush. So I will load up my brush and then I will unload it. So once I get paint in it, it's very much a getting all the paint off of it with lots of different dabs to make sure that I have a very little paint on here. And that means that even when you're working with paint that is thinned, you have absolute control of it. And that's how you do that. Like that's why these sable brushes are such game changers. You'll love them anyway, even if you don't do a lot of this stuff, just because they do hold perfect points. And so they will let you hit all of the details you've been trying to hit for ages unsuccessfully. But at the same time, they can do so much more. Once you start working with thin paint and texture, you can really elevate your paint jobs. And as your brush control gets better and you can hit these finer dots and textures more and more accurately, like with the belt here to make the nicks and stuff, that's when you can really up your game and start doing textures and weathering and really fine detail. And yeah. Ah, Luca goes on right after me. Okay, then is he ready for me to be a little early though? Because my back is starting to ache and I think I am going to call it a little early. I mean, it'll be a nice change for him, right? At least for once I'm not running late. Yes, Reaper Sable brushes are great for entry level. I would recommend the 0/5, Aught 5. What kind of glaze, Bull? I don't know if I think he looks great. I mean, I don't know that I would glaze any part of him. I'm actually happy with how the red came out. So unless I want to take down the texture, I don't think I would. Dirty palette. Ah, that is absolutely that your paint is separating. And you will notice that my paint is not separating, and that is partially because it's Reaper Master Series. And what that is either you're over thinning your paint, and I don't know what ratio you're thinning to, Valthorn, but or you're using a very heavy bodied paint, like Vallejo is one of these, especially the model color line. But it's a really heavy base, and so literally when you add water, the particles of resin are heavier than the water, and so it falls. And then the pigment, especially fine pigments like blue, green, or violet, will float to the top, and you'll get this funky flower effect. You need a few minis before going live? Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, okay. To start whenever. Okay, good. Okay. So you're getting a flower, huh? See, and that's weird because, like, you can see my paint. I have not, like, I don't have it. Even with this, and look at how thin that got. I wonder what's going on. Is there a particular color you see it with? Let's see, Valthorn. Paint of water, 30 seconds to 1 minute. Yeah, because most of these should not. What you can do, Valthorn, is you can try... Hold on. I'm going to have to stand up because my back is definitely irking, but I do want to talk to you about that. 80-20 for thinning? I started like 2-1. Purples can be really lightweight pigments, and you get the blue float as well, Valthorn. Try adding, like, if you have Flow Improver, try adding a drop of Flow Improver in place of one of your drops of water. See if that helps. Because Flow Improvers can help to keep stuff in solution. They can help with surface tension and with keeping stuff suspended. Various Flow Improvers do different things well, but that could help. So try substituting one of your drops of water for Flow Improver. See if it gets better. And if it gets better, you can experiment with adding even more. It shouldn't, though. Like, Master Series really shouldn't do that. It is made not to do that. Anyway, I have to get going, obviously. Ugh. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and I will be back tomorrow. And thank you, everybody from LucaStream that stuck around through all of this. I'm sorry I'm not going the full distance today, but I will be back. Yeah. I guess it could be. I'm using one with very small holes, and that does help, Val. If you are using just a few drops of paint and you're using like a wider something with bigger holes, then maybe that is maybe that could be part of it. Man, I'd have to mess around to see. But yes, thanks everybody. Thanks everybody. I promise I'll be back to normal soon. Have a good day and enjoy your Luca. All right? Bye-bye.